Michael Hooper here from the New South Wales Waratahs. Going to go through a few little drills that I'm doing here at the moment.
What we like to do at the Waratahs.
That last access step to perform dominant tackles.
I'll run you through both those kicks and show you how to execute.
My name is Sarah. Pushing through.
Take the space, move forward.
Then working back to find depth.
We do one full step.
The coach calls the defender while the attacker's trying to get over the ball.
Welcome everyone to the first New South Wales Positive Rugby Coaching Podcast. I'm here with the great Garry Walsh, and we just want to chat as much footy as we can, and hopefully we can learn a little bit from Walshy. So I just want to say straight off, Walshy, thank you very much for giving up your time. And I know you're a busy man sitting up there in the Northwest. So thank you for your time, mate.
No, mate, aren't we all busy? I mean, it's ridiculous. So I know that you guys in Sydney are locked down and that's awful. But us up here in the bush, mate, we're flying like eagles up here. The rugby's going and the game's great and we're living the dream. We feel for you boys in Sydney.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate that. And mate, I just sort of wanted to get around a bit of everything. And you're a player, a coach, a publican for a while, and a development manager. But the love of rugby builds somewhere there and obviously starts when you first start playing. But do you want to just talk to me as a player? You're from Sydney, and Easts and Randwick and a bit of rivalry there. But, yeah, talk to me about what sucked you in at the first point of rugby that made you want to love it, that turned into a lifelong obsession.
Mate, I think for me, I was playing league and I was playing for the Maroubra Lions Junior Rugby League, and we used to meet out at Matraville at the Pigeon Club of all places. And this particular night we had a social there and all the families were there and they had a three-legged race. And they paired me up with a little Indigenous boy and his name was Garry. And he carried me over the victory line and we won the three-legged race. And from there, a friendship built. And as we got a bit older, he started to play rugby and he was playing for a mob called Clovelly, believe it or not, junior rugby.
Mighty Eagles.
Yeah, he said, come over and have a game of rugby. You'll love it, Walshy. And that was at about the age of 13 or 14. And I've never looked back. I gave rugby league away and, played rugby ever since. And then I come across a bloke by the name of Greg Smith who went on to coach the Wallabies, but he coached me at school. And even though I wasn't a great player at school, he gave me one of those wonderful player moments. We played Matraville and they pumped us, and I was playing at fullback. And Greg Stores, who was lightning, ran around me, made me look like a statue. A few
great human Storesy as well. There's some good names already. We're only 3 minutes in.
Yeah, so, and anyway, bottom line is he sat down to speak to everybody after the game, the team, and the parents were in the background, and he looked me straight down the barrel and he said to me, Walshy, and that's the last time you'll have double digits on your back. So I went from fullback into the row under Greg Smith and never looked back. He gave me a leadership role there with the school. I'm one of those blokes that his rugby career peaked at the first 15 at school. We won a Waratah Shield. We got beaten by the Mighty Ellas. Had a great experience at school, and he convinced me actually to repeat. He said, you're a bit immature, Walshy. You need to have another year at high school. And I'm thinking, you've hit me on the nail here, Smithy. So I did that. I repeated and left school. He got a coaching gig at East Colts. He rang me up and said, would you come and coach with me at East and do the second grade Colts, and had just the best experience at East. What a great club it was to me. And I got to meet Doyle there, coached him there. Like the world's such a little incestuous place. So that's where it really came from. I had a couple of really good people in my life. Obviously, Garry, and he most probably doesn't know the impact that he had, but Greg Smith, huge impact on me. And it was an interesting time then because Greg Smith was coaching at Randwick Boys High, and here's he going down to the high-flying eastern suburbs, toffs at eastern suburbs, and we introduced a new character to that football club, and it certainly turned it around as a footy club in terms of the way that it could actually attract players from a whole different, parts of Sydney, and because we were a different breed, us Randwick Boys High boys, and we were different characters from, blokes like, I'm trying to think of some of their names. I mean, Youngie, who played down there, who was a great player and played Australian schoolboy level, but he played there, and Kyprios and all these sort of boys, and the Metropolis brothers, who put a different landscape on anything they touch and bring. So yeah, it was a really interesting way that I got exposed to rugby. And as I say, those two blokes, Garry and Greg Smith, were big influences off me as players. But I was never much of a player, mate. I just loved the game, and I try, and I loved the other things that it gave me, the mates and a great environment. And my father loved it. He never forgave me. He stood as the president of Eastern Suburbs Rugby Club, and my brother and I forgot the date and didn't go, and he got beat by a vote. He never forgave me. Even to the day he passed away, old Harry, he still gave me that funny look like, where were you on the 12th?
Well, I wanted to touch a little bit on Greg Smith, but I might go back a little bit. Just what you said about your mate Gary Ella and dragging you down to a club, and like just looking at your role now in Central North and New England, and trying to make more people play footy. And there's obviously a big role from New South Wales Rugby and the development guys in that, and then there's local zone in trying to organise it. But how important is that rugby camaraderie and, mate, dragging a mate down? Like, talk to me about the impact that if every rugby person out there had that Gary Ella in them, that they just said, come along, like, how important is that versus some of the other things that we might do?
Oh, mate, it's huge, and it still happens, and not only in our game, but we've all got peer leaders when we're kids, and you follow those peer leaders. And I was really lucky that mine was Gary Ella, but we can't undersell the fact that these young kids that play the game for us now can really have on the blokes and the relationships they have now, whether it be at a school environment or they're playing another sport, as I was playing. So those people, or those young kids that are in the game, they can make a huge impact, by dragging a mate down. It seems like a really simple thing to do, but it certainly changed my life. I mean, I'd hate to think where I was if I stayed playing league. Not that I'm downselling league at all, but I just would have had a different social environment, a total different life to the one that I'm leading now. But so those young kids that might be listening to this, tap a mate on the shoulder, bring him down, let him experience the game. It's one of those really inclusive things that I think that really sets us apart from most sports.
Yeah, and you mentioned it also with the Gary Ella and thing, and then leading down to East and changing culture and all that sort of thing you mentioned as well. But if I go back and try and just sit around that young kid sort of experience, you've got a great mate. Gary Ella, I'm sure, had some unbelievable skills developed down there with his brothers and all the local neighbourhood kids. And so no doubt following a kid like that is easy to do. But
no, it's not, because he colour play, and my first thing I'd always say is, not there, as a foot, not there. Gaz, not there. I was slow as a wet week, but and he was really tolerant of me, and he made me feel good. It was, so.
Mate, you're a very humble bloke. I'm sure you're slightly better than hopeless. But so if you're looking at your comps now that you're running up there, I know you started a Friday night comp with the help of the zone, and I mean that's got to be those kids pulling each other in. And do you want to tell us a little bit about how that was set up, and then how that's grown over the last couple of years? Because that to me is just someone who knows footy, knows their community, and drove an opportunity that's just turned into something excellent. And hopefully we will find the Gary Walshes and Gary Ella or whoever he was as well. Yeah,
mate, it was as you know, I took over some really good guys that were driving the development up here, in Craney and Sobby, Stephen O'Brien and Adam Crane. And they inherited a Friday night comp from a bloke by the name of James Tebolt, who he started it. James started it all, and it was purely a schools competition. And when I started the job, the feedback I'd get from when I go to our gala days was that, if you want to play rugby, you've got to be in Tamworth, past the age of 12 or 14 it was then. And I just kept getting this negative stuff, and I just thought, how can we do that? And then Simon Stewart, who took over the presidency of New England Juniors, and Renee Park started talking along the similar lines. And it was just like the moons aligning. We both had the similar thought that we've got to broaden this base. How do we do this? You know, how do we make it easier for these clubs and, well, at that stage, really schools to participate? And we'd stolen a model and seen what had happened down in the ACT, where they lacked critical numbers, and they lent on both the club and schools to come together, provide that. And then we started talking about it, and we took it to the community. And I honestly know what those witches felt like back in the 1800s. You know, like they really wanted to lynch us, and some parts of the community just said, you know, you're going to butcher the game. You can't be doing this, bringing clubs and schools together, and it's too hard. And they'll right on a couple of things. It is hard, but anything that's worthwhile, we know in life, it is hard. It doesn't come easy. And we were able to build it from, you know, a little competition of about 30 odd teams to where it is now. We're at 70 across 6 age groups, and we've really spread the network out. So it's not just a small school-based competition based in Tamworth, which at the height of its days had, you know, 1,200 kids participating, which is fantastic. In the later stages of that competition, Tas had to pull out because they went into the GPS competition in Sydney, and so they weren't playing anymore, and the competition got smaller. And then the clubs, we got them on board, and they started to play. And now Moree is just a wonderful rugby story. You know, we've got a bloke out there by the name of Sylvester Joseph. He's a solicitor out there, just a champion. And he thought this is a great opportunity for kids to be a part of something great. And they went from not being able for the last 15 years, using teams coming out of Farrer in Tamworth and playing under a Moree banner. They went from that, where they couldn't get their own kids, to now they have a 14s, 16s and 18s, and they're competitive, and they travel long distances on Friday night, and we make it hard for them in terms of time because we want to get them there so the other teams can get out. But they've been great, and that is just one of the great news stories. Inverell, similar. They were one of the clubs that really pushed back and said, nah, this is too hard, it won't work, Walshy, and it's no good. And now they've got 3 grades, and they're competitive as well. And actually, they won the first 16s comp in this competition. So travelling. So Inverell are another good story. Scone are built from a small base, and they're growing. And Corindi, still via the school, and some work with Erin Moore down there, and Nick Reese have done a great job in making a link to the club. And it's just turned into this infectious thing that's growing. And even though it is really challenging and it's hard work, they're travelling up to 4 hours on a Friday night to play footy. It's great, but we're reaping the benefits. And more importantly, in the scene, as it grows, and over the next couple of years, the seniors are going to have some real fuel for their fire to ensure that the numbers don't diminish at the senior level, but rather they start to broaden and grow that base. So it's a really exciting thing to be a part of. And it's just not the work that I've done. I mean, as I say, Renee Park and Simon Stewart, they are just tireless machines for the community game out here. And they don't look for recognition. They get none, but they can see. They don't. They get a pat on the back, and they're just wonderful humans. That our game wouldn't be where it is without their vision and their support, and the sheer fact that they just want to make it work. And we all get those days when we think, bugger this. You know, it's just someone's not happy because they didn't get a time or a place, or they played a team twice. But you work through all that, because the outcomes are the kids on the field playing footy. And when you get down there, last Friday night, we had 28 games of rugby played down at Plain Street in Tamworth, and the atmosphere was great. And you could just see the smiles on these kids' faces. You know, they just played. And then you talk about the girls' game, it's just gone berserk. You know, it's phenomenal, mate. So people that want to sit back, and I look at the stuff that comes through Rugby Australia where your game's sick, and I just wish they could have it just a little look in our backyard out here and see, you know, the joy that kids are getting out of the game, and the mums and dads seeing them play, and the way the community gets around and makes this competition work. It's just, I'm starting to tear up.
Mate, I love it. I'm just
really weird. It's really weird. I'm just emotional about it, because it means a lot, because, you know, so many people get so much out of it. It's just, wonderful thing. It's great.
And the names that you've mentioned there are the unsung heroes. And so everyone has their story with someone's influenced them incredibly. And just listening to that, the help of that community to make that happen around something that may have been pretty unpopular, but having that vision and having a crack and getting the community in behind it sort of created this incredible sort of opportunity for those kids, mate. And I'm interested in and this is not where we started the podcast, but this is where I want to go, mate. The school and club merging together, I suppose, into a competition where they can be across both, mate. That's, in some people would say that's the holy grail, and some people will tell you that's the death of footy. So your experience in that, obviously positive because of what you've just talked about, but was that one of the most challenging things, or did all the barriers drop once it started?
No, the schools were great. They've been really pliable, and some from the clubs will say, oh, you're leaning and supporting the schools more. But we're trying to get that touch base so that everybody's got to have some equity in the game. And to do that, then there's got to be parity across all parts of it. And it was challenged at the start, but once the school's got the concept and they register as a rugby club, they've really got behind it. And then you talk about the other unsung heroes, like you've got these teachers that do this work as an extracurricular activity. And you know, they've been able to bring 3 and 4 teams to this competition. And I don't want to downplay our clubs, because as this thing grew, they had these people knocking on their doors saying, we want to come and play. And the clubs are going, holy, we need coaches, we need managers, we need registrars, we need all these people. So when this thing took up, they all just grabbed the reins and they just let this animal run, you know. And, you know, Pirates, here in Tamworth, to the Moree crew, to the Inverell crew, to the Scone crew, they really found that they didn't have the infrastructure in place. So we really encouraged them all to lean on their senior club, because the senior club is where they can get the help in terms of the coaching and knowledge, and bring these dads along who have been, you know, putting their hand up in the air to coach the 12s and what have you on the 14s. And now they're playing in a youth competition that maybe don't have the skills, and they're leaning on their clubs. And that leads me to Scone, who really struggle in the senior comp. And a bloke by the name of Warren Park, yes, he is married to Renee Park, loves his rugby. The only negative thing about Warren is he's a red. I don't like him because he's a red. But he started coaching his kids down there alongside these men. Now, the men got just as much out of the kids as the kids got out of the men. And now the Scone team have been winning games, knocking off Pirates and Narrabri.
Wow.
And the Scone 18s have gone, I think they've won the last 4 games on a trot. So they've just brought this synergy together where these two groups of players have been able to learn on one another, learn and get better. It's been most probably for me, and those kids will transition from that 18s into that seniors, and that club at Scone is going to reap some fantastic benefits in the years to come. I was at Narrabri last night doing a junior session and a senior session, and they're sort of there together, but they still haven't maybe made that step yet where they really lean on one another. But they're really close too, and great atmosphere out there at the Narrabri club. But that Scone experience this year was, and you know, it's still going. I mean, they've got a big game this week. Scone play the Farah second side at home, alongside their 14s Friday night, and that entire senior Scone rugby club will be there to cheer those kids on. It's yeah, I might have to get some video and see if I can send it to you and you can put it up. It'll be a great atmosphere down there.
Mate, I'd love to see it. I just love hearing that almost full loop of connection. So yeah, you start a comp, it's got clubs and schools, but then you need coaches, and where do you get them from? And all of a sudden now the senior club, you need them, but then what they get back out of that, like, because of that, I mean, that's that whole rugby ecosystem. Sob speaks about that, and mate, it's I love this, and we could stay on this for 3 hours, and I'm going to move off it because I'm going to go back.
Before we move off it, it's really important that even though all the clubs are at a different stage of development, they're all on that path now. And I can see in the next couple of 3 years where all these clubs in this area that are playing in the youth and the senior space will really start to mould as one. And if we can get that to happen, then, you know, we're in a really, really good space, So it's progressing the right way.
So tell me this then, Walsh. So that's you've seen this, you've built something that had a bit of opposition and had a bit of
not
passion.
Not just me, Hilly.
I know, but you are the community. Let's say that for this one. you've told us the names of all the people that have helped you along the way, and so that you've built that as a bit of opposition. Like the day people stop giving you opposition, they stop caring. So there's always going to be those passionate people. But you plough that course, you're now seeing this almost a slightly different model. If you could sum that up in 1 minute and said, look, if you can do this in your rugby community, this is going to make a difference. How would you say that?
I think for us, knowing now what we do know is that at the start of the process, we would have engaged the senior clubs much sooner. So if you're going to put these together, then it takes a village to grow a child, as they say. So we've got to bring all those stakeholders together, because our youth clubs are connected to our juniors out here, which is 6 to 12s. So now that junior space has got to connect to the youth, because that's where they are. But the important part of the puzzle is if we started it again, then we'd engage all our stakeholders across the rugby community. So from the sixes through to the 58-year-old bloke who's still playing and loving the game. So it'd be connect them all together, give them the vision. The end goal is this, and we're now here. So I think if we did it again, we would engage those senior clubs, because it's not that it's a bad thing. I mean, I suppose everything's got to grow, doesn't it? But it'd be nice if we all had everybody together. Then we wouldn't have these teething and growing pains that we've got now. Like I've just spent 4 hours this morning having to reshuffle drawers because of, availability of teams to travel from one place to another, which doesn't affect the other thing, but the referee part of it does.
Yeah.
So we really rely on local communities, because we don't want referees having to travel out of their town to referee. So we're trying to build that capacity. So if we engage those senior guys at the start and said, mate, this is what we need to build. We need a couple of you guys to go and get your foundation referee certificate. And we could have had that there, but they've all sat back and watched it grow. And now they're looking at this freight train coming at them at 100 mile an hour. And we're all trying to scramble and pick up the pieces. So, we're working on trying to get the coaches educated and upskill them so that they can enjoy it as much as their players are enjoying it. And then we want to provide as many referee opportunities so that, one, we can build the base. But if the refereeing in matches doesn't match the game, then the experience isn't right and we don't get them bolted on. So the refereeing aspect and the coaching aspect, both of them have to come together so that the participants, who are the ones we want bolted, really have a good experience and they're not going anywhere. So it's a big map, but that's what I'd do, mate. I know it was more than a few words, because I don't know how to use a few words, but I'd engage the senior clubs and drag them along right from the beginning. That's, if I was trying to do this somewhere else, that's what I'd do, because we now know that it works, but it's just accelerating outside our capacity. And that's where we just, play catch-up footy all the time. But having said that, wouldn't change it for the world. It's been great.
No, and echoing that it's been great from an external point of view, just the things we see, and even just in numbers of saying, where's it growing? It's growing there because of it. So at whatever angle you're looking at it, mate, it's great. But to hear it and to hear that it's not someone made a decision, put a comp on it, it all started. It's not how it works. We need more. You need all those people you named. You need every element of that. And mate, I appreciate that story. I just, not where we were headed, but that's great. I want to take you away from that now for a minute and go back to you as a younger bloke. So when I was doing a little bit of research on you on the way through, I think someone mentioned you were Greg Smith's prodigy. So obviously he's had a big influence.
Go and count some seagulls, son. Wake up yourself.
So he's there. Now you're at Randwick Boys. He's coaching. Is he teaching at Randwick Boys at that time?
Yes, he was my English teacher. Yeah, I did 2A English or whatever it was. I was never good at stringing the words together, worse at maths. But yeah, he was a teacher. We didn't have it like we do now, where you have a head of rugby or anything like that. He just coached the first 15, and blokes that preceded him were fantastic too, and they built a great culture at that school. And
you go in there and you're playing your first 15, and he's the head coach. You enter the Waratah Shield, which doesn't exist in the same format as it used to, and let's hope we can bring that back at some point. So you compete in that. Do you want to talk us what happened there?
Mate, what my experience was with the Waratah Shield?
Oh, just tell me. 1978, I reckon, is the year that you were somewhere there and thereabouts in the finals.
Yeah. Well, that was a bit of a process. We'll start with 77. We played the Ellers in the final there at Concord Oval, and we turned 5-0 down at half time, and they just turned the magic on, mate. They were great rugby playing experience to play against those blokes. And I just remember being in Lloyd Walker's grill, ready to whack him. And then he was like a magician. He just vanished. I just don't know where he went, like they were just electric. And yeah, when they were on song, they were fantastic. So that was 77, finished my high school certificate, had a shocker. I think I got 97 out of 500.
Yeah.
So
Just say 97, mate.
Yeah, it sounds good these days. It was pretty ordinary back then. And that was when the conversation came. Greg said, "You're a bit immature. You need to grow up a bit. And I think you should repeat." And so that's what I did. So I repeated, and I got to captain the side in 78. And we had a really ordinary group of footballers, but we had blokes that were able to take that. I'm going to kill these birds. They're driving me up the wall.
We'll put that on the promo for the video, just you yelling, "We're going to kill these birds."
I might have to put him out the back, mate, because they're going to get worse. What do you want?
Yeah, mate, go for it. Absolutely.
Folks, back in 2 shakes. I'm just going to put these rotten things, because if I don't, then I'll have them in the oven tonight for dinner.
So while Walshy's away, Walshy's the development manager in the New England area and Central North, and his commitment to that community is incredible. If you see him out on the field, you'll see him with a 6-year-old giving that 6-year-old as much attention as the first grade guy from the Pirates. And that is the style of bloke that Walshy is. Then go home, eat, breathe, live rugby, and then prepare for the next coach education session where he might be presenting a level 2. So there's a million different things he's doing. And I'll probably cut that part out because that was boring. Walshy, welcome back.
Well, yeah, nice to be back. Got the conyers are outside now, so that'll give us a bit more peace.
So you get to the Waratah Shield second time round. You're captaining the side. You've got a group of ordinary football players. Yeah,
but they took all the work that Smithy gave, and like we were masters at 400s. Under 58 seconds with a 60-second recovery, and maintain that for 10 of them. Like we'll fit. And Smithy had a policy in those days that, it didn't matter what skill level you had. If you couldn't be there to execute, it was a waste of time. So our skill was poor, but we kept turning up, and we took all the work that he gave us, and we were a really tight bunch of guys. As I say, we weren't superstars, but we really stuck together, and we were able to win that final. We had a semi-final against. I'm trying to think who it was. Isn't that dreadful? I've got Alzheimer's. As you get a bit older, folks, you'll find that this kicks in. We're playing Ag College. Anyway, we were playing at Eastwood's old ground, and I had a bloke on the name of Peter Devlin was my vice captain, and we were under the pump, and we needed to score points quickly, and I was a goal kicker, and I thought it was too far to go. And this Peter Devlin just snatched the ball out of my hand, took a quick tap, and kicked the field goal about 46 metres. And we won the game by a point. And people were rapping me, saying, "Great captaincy, mate, great captaincy." I had no choice. He just took it out of my hands, and away he went. Yeah, Peter Devlin, what a champion he was, halfback. Yeah, he was groundsman at the cricket ground too. Anyway, that's another story. We got to play Stannies in the final at Coogee Oval, and we got them on that day. It wasn't a big score, and they were a big team, and they were well coached, and it was an occasion that I'll never forget. I mean, we had a proud history in that competition as a school, and we had teams go through it, and I think we won it 3 or 4 times before, and we were known as the ones that coughed it the year before. And it was a really good. It was a great night. Randwick Rugby Club that night, and those of us that were 18 went into the club because I'd repeated. I was a pensioner then, and it was a really good. I had a girlfriend that had a really good MG too in those days. I remember driving. Anyway, that's another story again. Anyway, fantastic experience, the Waratah Shield, and from there I went on and played for Randwick Colts under a bloke by the name of Dougie Alexander, and we were dreadful. Yeah, we were dreadful. I think our first game we went to Manly and got beaten by 60. It was, and we had some players too. We had Jeff Mould's son Grant in the team, and Eddie Jones was hooker. Yeah, we had some good players. Musgrave boys from Sydney High. Here's some names from the past. Yeah, we didn't have a bad team, but we just didn't come together, you know. We just, yeah.
Can I ask about that? I'm going to come back to Greg Smith because he comes back into your sort of thing shortly as well. But so you go from having this team that's not great, winning a championship, to having a team that is great and it is fantastic, and not winning and being terrible. And so with your coaching hat on now, what you can see with a bit of life and perspective that you've got now, how can we as coaches either change that environment, or what do we have to do to make sure we've got that champion team, not team of champions, or that sort of mentality? Talk to me about that.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is always be yourself as a coach. Don't try and be something you're not. That's the first thing. But I think from a philosophy background, you've got to be a good communicator.
You've just dropped out. Was she just going to start that again? So you dropped out. So the question was, how do you work with that? But you said the first thing, and then the internet went dead. So the coaching gold is lost for everyone. So there again, the first thing.
So the first thing is you've really got to be a good communicator. That's the number one thing. I mean, you can get through a lot of things in team stuff if your skill set isn't great as a coach in terms of passing on that knowledge. But you need to be a good communicator, and you need to be a really good people person, so that particularly at community level, you can make sure people are engaged. And that's the number one thing. So if you've got a group of players, the one are engaged, two, then they're going to hear your message. If they're not engaged, then they're not going to hear your message. So for me, I've always been a coach that's really tried to make sure we manage stuff off the field as much as you manage stuff on the field. And I found that's really worked for me. I had a bit of luck when I came to town. I always wanted to win a Heath Shield, which is the senior rugby competition here, and just really passionate about it. I never thought it'd happen. And we got a group of players together. There were some good ones too. I mean, you do have to have some cattle to win premierships without a doubt. But I just had this good rapport with them. You know, they were able to relate to me, and I was able to relate to them. And we did things off the field together, and we did things on the field together, and we had a lot of fun, you know. And it started to come out in the footy, and when things got tough, they were the things that we really relied on. So for any aspiring coaches, I think they're the keys. I think you've got to be a people person, and you've got to communicate well. You've got to make sure. And I think the other thing that underlines all that is you've got to have an understanding that they all know what the rules are.
What do you
mean?
Not
of the game. Not of the game.
The rules for your team, or your environment, or your group of people. This is what we live by. That's what the expectation is. So yes, you set the boundaries like a parent will with a 6-year-old. You try and set those boundaries, and we all work within those boundaries, whether you're coach, the fullback, the manager, anybody. So I think if everybody sees that level playing field and they know what the expectations are, then you can start to really work on your outcomes. So it's more, being a good coach, I think, is more than giving them some skills and knowledge about how the game's to be played, but it's about making sure that, my old man used to say to me, a good plan pursued with aggression and determination is better than no plan at all, boy. So I think that it doesn't matter if you've got an ordinary plan, if you pursue it aggressively and you go hard at it, then the chances of you getting the outcomes are okay. Everyone pulling in the same direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Then you live and die by the sword. So we're all in it together, you know. But when you've got them shooting off doing their own things and they don't want to, it's a bit difficult. So
tell me about corralling that though, Walshy. So you're okay. This is where I'm interested. There, you're a publican for nearly 20 years. You're a man of the people, right? So not every coach walks into a room and can hold the room, right? That's just the way it is. So for someone like that, we can set the boundaries, the operating procedures, the way we want to behave. We can build that over time. We can have our structures, how to throw lineouts and whatever. But how to get that team to gel? I think there's a great quote of no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Yeah. So in setting that environment, you said about the people and everything. How, for a coach, how do you get to be able to set that environment the way you want it? Easier for some coaches that are outgoing and just own the room immediately. But for those people that need to work their way into it, how do you build that with your players?
I think all coaches, it's, say what you mean and mean what you say. So I started with the little things, like training starts at 6:30. You know, you as a coach, you've got to be there, prep, ready to go. 6:30, I'd look at my watch, 6:30, let's go. I didn't care if there was one there or there was 50 there. And I got that from a, you might have to cut this, mate, but isn't it dreadful? I've forgotten his name, and he was a country coach and went on and coached Australia, and he moved to Tamworth. Daryl Harbright. Sorry, Daryl. Rest in peace, my friend. I should never forget your name. I met him at the pub. I ran the pub, the Imperial Hotel here in Tamworth, and Daryl Harbright was there seeing poetry during the Country Music Festival. And I didn't know who he was. Someone pointed out, because they knew I was a rugby player, that's Daryl Harbright. So me, no backwards coming forwards. I said, Daryl, Garry, Walsh, publican here, mate. I coach the local rugby team. Mate, would you address my players? And he said, why would you want me to address your players? He said, well, mate, we're getting pumped. We get beat every week. And I thought, you know, maybe a bit of inspirational words would help. He said, yeah, sure. So we set a date, and Daryl came. We set it for whatever time it was, 6:30. And 6:15, he was there in the room. And there was myself, the reserve grade coach, and 2 second grade players in the room. At 6:30 sharp, Daryl said, just go and close the door. So we closed the door. And they're knocking on the door. He said, don't let him in. Don't let him in. So he didn't let him in. We sat there and had a chat, and we opened the door after about 20 minutes, and there would have been 30 blokes there waiting to come in. And Daryl said to them all, okay, guys, we'll come back here next week, 6:30, we'll have another crack. Ready to go. So that's what he did. So as a coach, get back to your question, you set those, you're going to set that tone. So if training starts at 6:30, it starts at 6:30, not at 6:31, at 6:30. So you set that. So the expectation is there, and away you go. So then it's the little things for me, because I didn't have great knowledge. I did my level 2 ages ago, thought I knew everything, but really I didn't know much. So I do activities, whether it was fitness activities, a simple 400. If blokes didn't go around a cone, that was sacrilege to me, because you're cutting corners. You're prepared to cut a corner on Tuesday, you were going to cut a corner on Saturday. So I'd add another one. And in the end, no one had cut a corner. They were all disciplined. So it's how you approach it as a coach. It's not about your knowledge. It's about making sure that, you know, it's in your head that you're going to make sure you're the one that's going to lead the standards. You're the one, and it doesn't matter what it is, any part of the coaching parameter, but you say what you mean and mean what you say and move on, and they'll buy into it.
I love that. I love that. Now, if I go back now to Greg Smith, which is, so obviously you end up playing under him at school, you go to Randwick, play with some horrible players, decide to come across
great players.
Sorry. Great players. You come across to Easts. You're playing at Easts. Greg Smith's the coach at Easts at that time. Is that right?
Yeah, I coached there. I didn't play. I had bad DNA. If my parents were thoroughbred racehorses, they would have never let them breed. I had bad problems. I had a couple of back injuries and what have you. So I stopped playing. So Greg asked me to come and coach alongside him. So Greg was coaching the first grade Colts, and I was coaching the second grade Colts. So
what was it about Greg, mate, that's obviously an influence on your life at school and then brought you across to help coach? And mate, obviously this is the start of your coaching journey. Like, you're sitting there in the box seat to see someone who's going on to coach the Wallabies, how he goes about his business, how he creates culture at a club, how his standards, what he's coaching. Like, what do you learn in those couple of years there? And then I think there's a grand final at some stage. So talk to me about what you learned from an incredible coach at that time.
Yeah, well, I just followed him, mate. I just listened and hung off every his word. I mean, I suppose you've got to understand that as a 17-year-old kid, we're all very impressionable, and we did some silly things, but he led us in a manner that we believed in him. And when he asked me to coach at East, honestly, I thought I just won the lotto. I just thought, this can't be happening. You know, it really can't be happening. So to spend more time with him and just to, as I say, I learn off him. I just followed. Whatever he did, I did. If he was doing something over there on that paddock, then I was doing this over here on this paddock. I mean, I was just a bucket being filled up with water as information. You know, I just followed him. I thought he was great, and so I even started to speak like him, and so I just followed him. He put selection policies in place at East that I think they're still there today, and I use them now. All these things that I've got from the game and from Greg, I still use most of them now. The only thing that I suppose has changed from a coaching perspective is that I'm nowhere. I still believe that conditioning is really important, but there's different ways you can get that now. Ball in hand's a great thing now. So whereas in the old days, we just hammer them with 400s and all that sort of stuff. But I just hang off what Greg was doing, and I learnt. And I had a opportunity. Second grade side, we beat Warringah in a grand final, which was a great experience. And we got in trouble, I think, coming back on the bus after the grand final. We were driving through Double Bay, and some boys got their bare bottoms out windows and things, and we got chastised for that. But because we won the grand final, it was sort of a slap on the wrist. We wouldn't get away with that stuff these days. But
and I think at some time at East there, you guys end up making a grand final. It's against Randwick. You lose that grand final, but the Shield somehow makes its way back to East. Could you want to elaborate on that? Well, the lead up and then maybe what happened there?
John Petronitis and Mitchell Reed would roll over. They get in the Learjet out here and shoot me if I told too many stories about that. But yeah, it did find its way out of Randwick Rugby Club into the hallowed halls of eastern suburbs. I suppose they figured they were Randwick High boys, those two fellas, that they had some ownership of it. But anyway, maybe not quite. But yeah, we can't elaborate on that too much.
I'll cut that one out there, Walshy.
No, that's all right. You can leave it in there. No, it's fine. Yeah, it's I think 21 years and you can't get caught anymore. Is that right, Hilly?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
so you coach with Greg and you learn a lot. And I don't know, even personally in my coaching, I had an incredible coach that I worked with for a couple of years who's been outstanding, the best coach I've ever worked with. And I learned the vast majority of the way that I did things from that person. And DC is an incredible coach. We're getting back next year. But
absolutely rating. Good human too.
Great human.
And empathy for the community game, mate.
100%. And those sort of leaders that are there, and I'd say yourself, when you leave there, you go to the bush, you start at Pirates, and you sort of bring your knowledge there. And I'm interested from a young coach's perspective. It's sort of, there's that time in your career where you've got to learn. And how did you have some advice for someone that is just trying to find that person to wingman with, or that place or that opportunity so they can go and learn? Do you have any advice for some people there? And then we'll talk about Tamworth.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of fate, isn't it? I mean, it's where you are at the time and who's around you. And I suppose we all get led by different things that happen to us within our life. But as I say, I think that's a hard one for me to answer, Hilly. I don't know. I don't know. I was just lucky, mate. I can't give advice to. Yeah, I can't. I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm with you. And look, I guess then I'd say in my experience of being able to find that person that's willing to give you the time, and I think this is a quality of really good coaches, and maybe you can elaborate on this, is when you're talking to someone that operates at that level, that is just able to make people believe that you're the most important person when they're speaking to you and that they care about you, then you give them so much. But in an environment where you're trying to learn, when you find those people that are willing to share their knowledge, and often they put a lot of pressure on you to also perform, but those people are sort of in that rarefied air. And if you can find that person, and it doesn't have to be the amazing coach, it could just be someone who's excellent as a mentor. But those people tend to be good leaders, and coaching's as much leadership as that. And I guess the question there, Walsh, is how much of it is it about knowing the people that you're working with and being able to give yourself to that group before they can do the 400s for the 50th time, or put their head in a dark place with a minute to go to save a game?
Yeah, I think that's all around the environment that's set up. I mean, it's not we don't always get slapped in the face with those sorts of things. It's something from within, and I think that for me, I gravitated to that stuff because I respected the bloke, and if he'd said to me, I need you to go and do X, Y, Z, I just go and do X, Y, Z. Because I knew that the outcomes would be the ones that they're going to be right for me, Not that I'm suggesting people go out there and be blindly led. But I think that when those opportunities come your way, you do recognise them. You really do. When good people are in your life and you've learnt things from them, and more importantly, you respect them, then I think you add that to your toolkit and you start to move forward. And I suppose in your own life, you've got to be in the right circumstances too. And I know this sounds all a little bit wishy-washy, but yeah, those moments are rare in your life. And when they do arrive, then, you know, you've really got to grab them with both hands. And not that I ever knew that Greg Smith was going to be a Wallabies coach or anything like that. I just saw him operate and trusted him and believed in him and knew that that's what I wanted to be. And I wanted to coach like he was. And I wanted to have the respect that, you know, he got from people and all those things. And they just don't come because you hang around someone. You've got to start to find your own way, be yourself, as I said. Don't try and be someone else, and take those snippets of knowledge and add them to your already, which you don't always believe, your wide base of toolkits and tools in the toolkit that you've got. So I think you've just got to, be prepared to learn. And part of that learning process is fear. And you've got to overcome that fear, because a lot of people don't have that next step or have a go because either they think they're not good enough or they think that they, you know, won't be respected, or you've just got to challenge yourself and be respectful of that fear and be prepared and do your best. And 9 times out of 10, it ends up being enough, you know, it really is, if you prepare well and you have a crack. So don't be frightened. Don't let fear be the one that closes the door on any opportunities you might see in front of you. Just push that fear aside, go and learn, go and be around people who are like you or you want to be like, and move forward. Yeah.
And you talk about fear. I'm interested in that, even from a player perspective, that fear of failure. So that person that wants to, be the best or look like they're the best, or they want people to perceive what they do as amazing, and that can be held back by that fear. And can you talk to me about failure and how important that is to actually get better? Because
I think that fear thing is twofold. One, it is, as you say, fear of failure. But the other one, particularly from a coaching aspect, is fear of not being good enough or not having the knowledge. You gain the knowledge as you go. And the more you work, the more you get. The more you're prepared, the more you get. So they're the two fears. Certainly for me in my younger days, when Greg said, I want you to come up and coach reserve grade, I panicked. I just thought, I'm 24 years of age and, you know, I'm coaching some blokes that are 30 that have been playing the game, you know, for 20 years, you know. So I had to overcome that fear. And to overcome that fear, one, you've got to be prepared to have a crack. And two is just prepare the best you can. And each time you do prepare, you're going to prepare a little bit better and a little bit better. And but just having a go, you know, so fear's twofold. But so you talk about fear of failure, and that all comes back into that preparation stuff. So the more you prepare, the fear diminishes. As you prepare, the confidence goes up. And I know that we talk about it in coaching courses. We're all process driven, and if we follow the process, or we have a process that we're prepared to follow, it not only gives the players a chance to work and grow and develop, but coaches get that opportunity too. Because if we lived in a win-loss scenario, we don't have a lot to talk about on Tuesday. So I know we're all about that, but there's still this fear that you want to win, and winning's important. I mean, we play particularly at their high levels because we want to win. But as I say to coaches, the more you prepare, the fear comes down, and then the greater the preparation, the more confidence you'll have, and that will fall onto your players too. So, yeah, fear can be preparation.
We'll dive into that a little bit more. So that fear, that when you're panicked with that, the young coach, or you've got, I don't know, the 500 game veteran comes back and starts playing with you, and you're trying to tell him or her what you're going to do and how it happens. And how's that sort of relationship go when you fear? Are you okay in saying, look, I don't know, what do you reckon? Is that a strategy, or is that something you learn? Or
honesty is the best policy. I was delivering last night in Narrabri, and one of the guys or co-coaches was the assistant coach of our Australian women's sevens team. Great fella, great knowledge. And here I am delivering a session to a bloke who I know has got far greater knowledge than I. So if your coaches are in that environment, you don't push that stuff aside. You embrace it, because it's a learning opportunity for you as a coach. So I did a lot last night. I'd go, and what do you think, Jack? How would you manage that? No, you got it, Walshy. Oh, I went from a little 44-inch chest to this big 56-incher I could get when I get all puffed up. So you've got to lean on those people. Don't be frightened of someone in your group that might have an idea or have some more. You perceive that he might have more knowledge from it. Use that as a tool, and don't be frightened of it. We don't all know it. It's easy to, as I say, honesty is the best. I don't know. What do you think? Absolutely. Embrace the knowledge within your group. That's what makes a good coach.
And when you're saying that, do you think there's a big difference in the buy-in when you're allowing players to be part of that? So if I'm directorial saying this is what we're doing, and they're in the background going, mate, I'll do that and it doesn't work, I want to do the other. If you don't give them that opportunity to input, is that, does that build team, or is that just a way that you relate? What? I
think that's a really good learning opportunity, not only for the coach, but it's for the team. Because let's face it, we as coaches, and we say to them, you get an opportunity to address your team 2 nights a week and half time on game day. That's your time. So the rest of the time, when it really matters, they're out there on their own. So if they can problem solve at training, then they're going to problem solve on the game day. So the more you can get them to buy in, and that's why we as coaches, and I know a lot of people that do our courses think, oh, it's a bit wishy-washy, but we really focus hard on that questioning of players, because we want them to have the answers, because they're the ones that have got to fix it. We want them to have the knowledge. And 9 times out of 10, even coaching a 12-year-old kid, you'll say to him, listen, Billy, why did you drop that ball? And he'll know. He said, I didn't have a target up, Walshy. Like, they know the answer. Instead of me saying, get your target up, I want him to say back to me what the problem was. So then we've got an understanding there that we know that they understand. So now it's a matter of concentration, some other things you can work on. So questioning at training, whether it be from players or coaches, just ends up in better understanding, and better understanding ends up in great outcomes for football teams.
Mate, how good is that? I know Pat Lamb tells some stories about the way he gives feedback, and he'll say, he'll have all his notes from, the thing. He will have seen the video 12 times. He'll say, Walshy, how do you think you went? And Walshy, you say, I dropped off a couple of my passes. Oh, okay, you dropped off a couple of passes. He already knows that you dropped off. So why was that? And Walsh, my hands didn't finish the target. Oh, okay. So what are you going to do this week? Oh, I guess I'll do some extras on my hands finishing the target. Okay, so you go write that in your skill plan and off you go. Mate, and the player's done it all himself. The player's told the coach what he's going to do.
But what was the other thing the coach had done?
Yeah.
Preparation.
Yeah.
He prepped.
Spot on.
Yeah. So and we've all got different levels of prep, and I don't want to frighten some of our community coaches, because that is to the nth degree, which is great. But there's just prep. Watch your games, prep. Let kids solve problems. Let men solve problems, and you steer them along the path.
So you've said solve problems about 50 times. This is one of the things I reckon it's not new in coaching, but I reckon it's new to a lot of people, is that idea that a 12-year-old can work out how to get it done, and so can a 21-year-old, and so can an 8-year-old. So as a coach, if you let your ego step out of the way and you allow that to happen, and it might be slow, and there's a lot of things, a constraints-led approach, there's lots of technical terms. But if I said to you, Walshy, what do you want to see at a under 10s training or an under 18s training? Do you want a chaotic-looking environment, or do you want something with crisp, clean, just there's the drill, run up and down the lines, hands come through? What's the balance there, and what do you think accelerates kids from an 8-year-old to a 16-year-old the best?
Well, I talked about coaching early, and we did things vastly different in the early days. So now it's all about making sure that players are operating in an environment that's very similar to what the game scenarios are. So for me, I'm really big on small-sided games. And I say to coaches all the time, there's no set rules around small-sided games. Just whatever part of the game you want to work on, well, that's what you put in the game. And if they don't get it done, then there's a turnover or something else has got to happen. There's got to be a ramification for that not executing that play. And kids prefer, and men do too, to be playing game-based scenarios, that being in, a very regimented format. Having said that, sometimes when we have to micro-skill, we need to go into that closed environment to really break down the skills so we can get the execution right. But then it's really important to put it back into that chaotic environment that you talked about, where they can actually solve these problems under pressure, a whole range of pressure, whether it's time, it's space, whether it's contact, whatever it might be. And coaches can make their sessions so varied, whereas, as I say, in the early days, ours were pretty stagnant. Jesus crikey.
Mate, and mine too. And I remember as a coach, mate, I used to fall back onto, I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm going to run these blokes into the ground, and we're going to be fitter than everyone. And that works to a degree. And if you do it in the right way, you can build some culture around it. But certainly, if you want to take a group to the next level as quickly as possible, it is not through doing didactic, this is how you do it, stand in it and get it done. You've got to let them make those decisions and grow in that environment. So if I could ask, I think it's probably nearly time to wrap up. If I could ask, you could walk around to any rugby club in Australia and you haven't seen the session, but you need to give a couple of pieces of advice to those coaches because there's things that you know make the difference. If I had to challenge you with that, what would the couple of things that you would like to see at every rugby club, or the way a coach approaches at every rugby club, something that would make a difference, would move the needle?
Okay, move the needle. Well, the first thing I'm going to say is, as a coach, never get there and get them to do a lap to warm up. I see that, and I go, a coach hasn't prepped, and we're all busy, and I get that. Oops, I get that. We're all busy. He hasn't. But for me, I want to see kids engaged. So for kids to be engaged, they've got to be active and playing chaos. That's what I'd like to see. And I think that from a coaching perspective, I'd like to see a lot of positive reinforcement. Pick out all the things that they do well. It's easy to chip things and let them problem solve. And as I say, focus on the positive things they do, not the negative. So that's it from me, particularly those younger kids.
Yeah. And that just, can you just broaden on that positivity? Do you see that as building that person up along the way and making them want to love being in that environment? Like I know often if you're told in a workplace, if I told you constantly what you did wrong, never gave you a solution, and only praised you when you had a complete outcome, you'd move jobs.
Yeah.
So exactly right. A kid in a playing environment, they're there because they want to have some fun. So do you want to talk about that positive reinforcement about the environment, about making that kid love rugby is probably as important as his skill development or her skill development?
I think they go hand in hand. They really do. You've got to make sure that, one, they're going to learn more if they love it. And if they love it, then we've got to make sure that we're more focused on the positive sides of coaching, because kids are always going to make mistakes. Players are always going to make mistakes. And it's a matter of, using what we call in coaching, not being a planted tree. Get out there and walk around the kids and give them some feedback right there and then. Don't be a spruiker from one spot. Actually go and have a one-on-one with a kid and ask a question about how he could do something better. So positive reinforcement, particularly to the group. I would say you look for those coachable moments when someone does something you think's really good, then stop there, everybody, let them have a look at it and learn from it. It pumps that kid up and everybody gets a chance to see best practice. But most of all, just focus on the positives that kids do. And as I say, get that tree plantation out of your head. Don't be rooted in the ground as a coach. Get out there and ask some questions of your players in terms of developing their skill acquisition. So it's pretty simple, I think, Hilly. And coaches got to have fun too. They don't want to be rousing on everybody. And don't anybody out there watching this, I know coaching 10-year-olds and 8-year-olds and even 12-year-olds and 14-year-olds I coached last night, they go off on their tangents. So if they're doing that to you, they're disengaged. Come up with something, get them involved, make it fun. You'll get to your outcomes in the end.
Mate, that is fantastic. And I don't even reckon we scratched the surface, mate. I could talk to you about development. I could talk to you about coach ed. I could talk to you about women's, which we didn't really touch on, and the growth and opportunity there. But mate, we will finish it there. So, mate, I appreciate you, mate, as a person and what you're doing in footy. But the reason we chose you was because you are a bloke that's done it and it's out there doing it and that values the community around it. And that's what our game's all about, is the people, the characters, and everything that's around the sport is as important as the game on Saturday, and you are the epitome of that, mate. So
Well,
thank you
very,
very much.
very nice words, but I don't always get it right, as you know. But I'm prepared to get up and dust myself off and have another crack. And it's all about learning, whether you're coaching or you're working or with your wife. It's all about learning.
You're a great man, Walsh. Appreciate it, and we'll
Good to chat to you today. It is Wednesday. You know what Wednesday is?
Well, it feels the same when you're in lockdown. It's the same as every day.
You be good.
See you, mate.
Michael Hooper here from New South Wales Waratahs. Going to go through a few little drills that I'm doing here at the moment.
What we like to do at the Waratahs.
That last accel step to perform dominant tackle.
I'll run you through both those kicks and show you how to execute.
My name is Sarah. Pushing through.
Take the space, move forward.
Then working back to front depth.
We do one full step.
The coach calls the defender while the attacker's trying to get over the ball.